We have a special guest on the line with us today. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury. I'm going to be hosting Archery Talk 101, and we have Todd Davis on the line with us, and we're going to find out his fantastic stories about his archery journey. And welcome to the show, Todd.
Thanks, Roy. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate that.
Well, introduce yourself. Let us know something about you and what's going on in your world.
Thanks. My name is Todd Davis. I'm an outdoor writer and content creator, also the owner of Davis Outdoor Adventures, based out of North Texas. I've been in archery now a little over 30 years. Got the bug from my dad, so that's a whole nother story. But anyway, I do appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun talking to people all over the world, and you're going to have some interesting stories about what you do and archery. So I know you said your dad was into outdoors and archery. So why is it that you got started with it?
I don't, my dad was my hero. So everything he did, I wanted to do. And he loved the outdoors. Him and his two cousins, they were into everything from dove hunting to reloading to bow fishing. And he had an old Browning recurve bow with a little Zebco reel on it. And they would go down to Grand Lake there in Oklahoma. And when they would shut the dam, all the fish would kind of get stranded downstream, and they would walk down there and shoot carp and catfish and whatever was legal to shoot. And so anyway, he worked nights. So a lot of times during the day, we lived in a small farm out in northeast Oklahoma, and I snagged his bow while he was gone, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I took his arrows that were, tipped with an arrow that you would use for bow fishing. And I went out hunting birds, and I had no idea that I lost so many of his arrows. By the time the day was over, I think I had one arrow left. And anyway, they were stuck in various trees. And so I got in big trouble over that. So he decided that maybe he should probably teach me what to do and what not to do before I lost all of his arrows. But that's how I got started with it. But it was a lot of fun. He got me into almost everything that I do outdoors. Dove hunting. I started out as the bird dog. I had to go get the birds, and you learn about safety and hunting in general, and then you also learn about all the stories that they tell, and you kind of side on your dad because you know how the story really went. But anyway, we did that with my two uncles, and we just grew up with that. And I write a lot about those stories on my webpage, Davis Outdoor Adventures. I kind of changed the name to, Clem Kardashian on a play on the name there. But anyway, I write about that, and it's a lot of fun that we had back then. And, that got me launched in the career that I'm in now, actually.
Yeah, that sounds like a real nice environment to grow up in with all that. I know that you have to start off with being the bird dog and stuff like that, and I can remember going out with my cousin, and you start off with that. You're there, and then you take your little brother along, and they're the bird dog because you don't know how they deal. And I know when I took my son out the first time pheasant hunting, I knew he'd had all the training that we really need to have, and I told him, there's three things I'm going to ask you. You fail any one of them one time, and you're unloading the gun and you're done for the day. And one would be, okay, is your safety on? And I would check. If that safety was not on, he's unloading and done for the day. And then ask you, okay, where's everybody in your party? You're out with a bunch of people all through it. He'd have to tell me where everybody's at. And the third question is, where would you expect somebody to all of a sudden pop up in front of you? So you had to point out all the places that somebody, like a tree line, all of a sudden they could be pop out there over the top of a hill. You have to point out all those places he'd expect somebody to just all of a sudden be there. And he had to point all those out. And you know what? He never failed. So I never had to have him unload his gun because they always careful of that. I remember one time he said he went out with some friends and they were walking around and none of them had their safeties on. He says, that I just stayed way back. I never with them, never go with them again.
Yeah,
And you know, it's not safe. And you know, hunting is a safe sport if you pay attention to safety. You know,
exactly right.
whether it's firearm or archery. You know, more archers get hurt by falling out of the tree stand than they do from being shot by a bow.
Yeah, my dad preached that to me. So he took me out and you know, he taught me how to scout for deer, and you know, back then we didn't have game cameras or anything, so you know, it was woodsmanship was a big part of what you do. And so anyway, he took me out there in some public land over by Ulagal Lake. There were not far from where we lived, and he, you know, taught me how to read sign on game trails, and you know where the acorns are, because when they start dropping, you're gonna you know, have more deer coming that way. So anyway, he made me make my own deer stand. He showed me how he made his, and so I had to make mine. And but you know, I was good all that, and I made it, and it was a little close to the ground for his. You know, it was maybe only 10 feet off the ground, but you know, I didn't really know what I was doing as much as he did. But so anyway, I thought it was a great stand, and we got out there, and he's like, well, that limb that's coming out there beside your stand, what you gonna do with that? And I thought, that's when I would hang my stuff. And he's like, well, how are you gonna draw your bow back with that big limb hanging right there? And I got to look at it like, oh, I guess I'm going higher than I wanted to. So after that,
Yeah.
I went above the limb, you know, still could put my feet on it. But anyway, you know, you learn those things. And like you, you know, there's some things Dad he wanted you to learn the hard way. And that was just, you know, one of those things that every time I hang a stand now, that's, you know, I always think about that lesson I learned from Dad.
Yeah, that's a thing. Just hanging stands can be a big problem why people fall out. I've seen stands where you're walking up the pegs and your head bumps into the bottom of the stand, and you have to climb around it to get into it. And it's like, how do you get in there safely without, you know, almost falling? And you know, I always have my pegs climb up, so I have a peg above my stand, so I'm stepping up onto a peg. I step down to my tree stand. I never use the tree stand as a step to climb up on. And I have two more pegs up there. So I have my 1 foot above, both hands hanging on, and I'm stepping down onto the tree stand platform. And now I still have 3 points of contact. If the stand was to fall, then I'm at least hanging on. And you know, now with the lineman lines, you bring those up, and it's always strapped to the tree. You know, those are nice.
Yeah.
On those.
Yeah, I use that line all the time. If I'm on a hang on or climb on or whatever, I'm always strapped onto that. I had a cousin. He didn't actually fall, but he had a climbing stand, and it slid about 10 feet, and he held on. And he said that what I was worried about was I had my on a limb hanger, and it was the arrow and everything was already knocked, and I was worried about that arrow coming off and hit me, but it didn't. But he did have some serious road rash from hanging onto the tree for about 10 feet, but he was okay. He was a big guy. He's amazing he didn't go all the way to the ground, but he just had a little road rash there. But after that, he went out and bought one of those lifelines. He said, you know, I'm too old to break my leg. So
well, and when I set up my safety belt when I'm in a tree stand, I set it up so when I'm sitting on the seat, it's got a slight tug pulling me up. You know, so if I ever fell, I couldn't get my seat below the platform because it won't let me fall that far. And that way I don't have to worry about having all that sudden, you know, what's going to hurt you the most when you fall out of a safety device is that sudden stop, you know, when it hits, because they're not really elastic to you know, slowly reduce your speed. You know, all of a sudden you fall off the tree stand and it just drops down. Well, if you're standing up on a tree stand, you know, you're only going down, you know, maybe 2-3 feet. before your safety belt is already tight. And, if depending how long it is, sometimes as I'm standing up, it's got a slight tug down on me, so I don't have a lot of movement. I don't need a lot of movement because I'm on a platform that's, maybe 2 foot square.
Right.
It's not, so I don't have much movement anyway. And then, so you're not going to turn around and shoot the other direction. Is just, your safety belt's in the way and all kinds of stuff. So, you kind of set up, I can go a little bit because I'm right-handed, I can go a little bit further to the left, but shooting to the right. Yeah, I always make sure that I have no shots at all to my right because I can't get them anyway.
Yeah, I kind of like my back cover on my right side because I know I'm not going very far that way, and I'm 6'5", so when I stand up, I need a lot of clearance, and I have a 32-inch draw length, so I need plenty of room to move around up there. But I still like you say, I'm trying to keep all my back cover on that side, and hopefully I don't get busted if I have to stand up. I shoot generally when I'm sitting down anymore, but there are some trees you just can't do that. You have to kind of stand up to get clearance. But
Yeah. Well, I brought, for those watching, now our listeners on Audible, the podcast is also available on Spotify and Audible. You can listen to it for free there. You won't be able to see it, but I can share my screen because I brought up Davis Outdoor Adventures, and we can actually talk about your website here a little bit. So hopefully this is the right website.
that's it. That's it.
So kind of go over, kind of the stuff that you have here. It looks like you have featured hunters, Clem Kardashian, product
Yeah,
review, and contact.
yeah. It's kind of my working laboratory. So I guide. I used to guide a lot of hog hunts and turkey hunts in Texas, and I met some of the best people, and I wanted to to kind of like Mr. Swank right there on that picture. I kind of wanted to just write about their adventure that they had. I mean, we had guys that would come from as far as Vegas and Minnesota and places to come down to hog hunt. And I had a really popular special that we ran that was either father, son, daughter, son, and father, or it didn't matter, whatever combination, as long as you brought a kid, we gave you a break. And we got a lot, like Mr. Swank, he homeschooled, and every summer they would take a break and just travel somewhere. And he would always try to find a local place to either hunt or fish. And so he looked me up, and they came down. We had a great time. And then the other thing too is just I got a following on Instagram and stuff, and it's really interesting to see the pictures of like the hog or the bear hunt right there. And you get to talking to guys and hunters or females, and they have an interesting story, but they're not necessarily a sponsored hunter like you would see on TV or something like that.
Right.
They don't have their own TV show or anything, but they might, half their gear may have been bought at Walmart and a pawn shop. You don't know, but they still have an interesting story. He went out he's from Montana, and he goes bear hunting. And he was telling me, something that we don't even think about in Texas is, we have a lot of places that don't have cell coverage, but up there you may be driving in a blizzard and there's no cell coverage. So there'll be every so many telephone poles will still have a landline, so if you get stuck, you're not going to freeze to death. But anyway, he was telling me about his story and how he drives as far as he can in his truck, unloads a snowmobile, drives as far as he can there, and then walks as far as he can to get back to where he wants to bear hunt. And he shot a really old bear. And he had mentioned a few things about that on Instagram. I thought that is the coolest thing, especially, coming from Texas where we don't have bear running around all over. But anyway, I got to know him, and I was like, man, I got to have your story. So it just turned out it was the most interesting thing. So featured hunter there on the webpage is really kind of getting off the ground, but it's more about just your average guys. It's not about hunters that are sponsored by 15 or 20 different big names and stuff. It's just your average guy that still has really interesting stories, still has the passion for hunting. And it's both bow hunting, rifle, just whatever type of hunting that you're into. You know, I'm not limiting it to just bow hunting, but anyway, that's starting to get a little traction there, and he got some interesting comments and stuff. So, and then the other thing too is that he was telling me about how much fun him and his family had reading about it online. And to them, that particular hunt then lives on, you know, and he gets to share that with his family. And now he just recently had a baby girl, so he'll eventually be able to show her online about the hunt and stuff. And then I do product reviews that are kind of products that are just trying to get off the ground. They don't have a lot of traction yet. Sling Hook is actually from a company called Talarak out of Alaska, and she found me on LinkedIn. And what that does is that attaches to your backpack. So if you're gonna if you have a sling on your bow or a sling on your rifle, and you know how it will slip off because your nylon backpack strap is slick and then your sling is slick, so that has a little hook on it and it keeps from sliding off your shoulder. So anyway, she sent that to me to take a review on that. I got another review that I'm writing right now on some new products from Otis gun cleaning kits. So they're sent me some stuff for an AR-15 cleaning kit. So and then and there's Mr. Swank again. He was kind enough to be my model. His boys were there and they were just cracking up at his lack of hair being a model, you know. But he's a great guy. They had the most fun. They took full advantage of their time out in it was the least out in only Texas, and they shot 3 or 4 pigs, and he brought coolers. He wanted small pigs because he's going to take them back and smoke the whole hog. So they had a great time doing that. And then you know, the boys just jumped on 4-wheelers, rode all over, and they wanted to see everything that was Texas. They had never heard of Frito chili pie, so that was interesting. I thought everybody knew what Frito chili pie was, but evidently up north they don't have Frito chili pie. But I guess if you don't know what Frito chili pie is, it's just a bowl with Fritos on the bottom, chili, and then cheese on that, and then you can add jalapenos and onions to your taste. But they thought that was gourmet, so it was great. And they brought enough cheese. They were, I think, from Wisconsin, and they brought a lot of cheese, and I had no idea there was such a difference in cheese, but their cheese was a lot better than my cheese. I know that much. But then
when you're up in Wisconsin, you better know your cheese, right?
Yeah, they did. And they were telling me all that. And it was funny, even their smaller son, he knew whatever, just by looking at the cheese, he knew what that was. So they kept me going on that, but it was fun. I really enjoyed those guys. They were a lot of fun to come down. And then now you're looking at Clem Kardashian, and some of these stories are loosely based on the truth of how I grew up. You know, and also some of it is just adventures that I've had here in Texas. And so that, you know, Clem and his buddies, they have a whole community. I have my son-in-law's sister-in-law is a artist, and so she does some of the graphics for me. She does a great job. But we have a good time with that. Clem's a pretty funny guy. Him and his buddy Bart, they have their adventures together. So you know, it's a lot of fun to write. I could write about those guys all day, but I'm kicking around the idea of putting all that together in a book. So we'll see if that pans out. But there's a lot of fun with those guys.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I know. You know, what's funny is my mom has, you know, there's 16 brothers and sisters. And so I have all these cousins that I grew up with, and they like to read about Clem, and they'll text me and let me know, hey, I remember that. That was that was my dad, you know. And I'm like, I know. So I kind of protect the names with Clem, you know, from so they don't get anybody in trouble. But they'll crack up. They're like, I remember that. They still tease him about that, and so it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
But that way you have a made up name in it, but it's based on somewhat true stories, and sometimes true, sometimes made up, and they're just kind of interesting stories. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say go out and read some of those. Those sound like they'd be a lot of fun to read.
Yeah, I love writing about them. I really do. But you know, it's funny. I was a contact center architect for a company, Avaya, and did that for a lot of years. And I got into writing. I started writing for Buckmasters, doing tips, hunting. They have a little section for hunting tips, and that kind of morphed into some other work. And so as I was guiding the hog hunts and the turkey hunts, I was also writing about them. And then a couple of marketing companies contacted me, wanted me to write, and so it's just morphed into a career now. And so that's what I do. I did the hog hunts for about 4 years, and the lady that owned the property passed away, and the family sold everything. So I still write about everything, but I don't get to do the hog hunts anymore. But I do have a couple of leases that I hunt and take friends out to, but it's more about the writing anymore.
Yeah, that sounds like you're having a lot of fun. You know, you hear the stories, and I know that's one nice thing about, you know, me doing the podcast. I get to hear all these stories from the hunters, and you know, I don't cater to anybody specific, but if you're an archer, hey, you're fair game. You're welcome on the podcast. And you know, everybody has a story. You know, I've had a few times like, well, why me? I'm don't really know much archery. You're an archer, right? You have stories, right? Well, I want to hear them. And that's just so fun, is hearing all these stories, and you're actually writing about them, and that's cool that you're able to do that. And I know there's a lot of interesting stories out there from all kinds of different hunts, and there's just so many of them. And you just have to go back and listen to the podcast, because everyone has got interesting stories. And I know some of those stories in there got to be about you on some of them. What's something interesting that you've been on a hunt? Something maybe that it's challenging, or was exciting, or it's real memorable to you?
You know, probably the most memorable. I was in the Army for 8 years. I got out in 1990, and so from 82 to 90, opportunities to hunt with my dad and my brother were really limited, and we took advantage of them, but it was just something that we all missed. For us, it's a big family thing, and it's where you get to catch up and talk about things. And you know how it is when you're out hunting, or even if you're just sitting around the campfire at night, you talk about everything, life in general, to something funny that happened, to something that's troubling you. You talk about it. But so anyway, I got out of the Army in 1990 and moved back to Oklahoma. And my dad was so excited that the three of us would get to hunt again, that he got a lease just not far from where we grew up in Winganon, Oklahoma. But he was really excited about it. And he was more a bird hunter, and they like to do his bow fishing, but he knew I'd like to deer hunt. And so we got this deer lease. It was about 120 acres, but it was in great spot, just kind of a natural funnel for the deer that came out of the bottoms, river bottoms there. And so anyway, I was like, Dad, well, it's going to cost us a little bit to get started here. There's nothing here. And he goes, and my dad is a welder, so he had a steel pile out there, and we started building stands. And if you know anything about my dad, Fred, You know, one thing, anything he builds weighs 400 times more than it should. So it took all three of us to get that deer stand up there, but it was solid. I mean, it wouldn't move, but you know, oh my gosh, that thing, I still have it, but I hate to use it because I just hanging that thing, it takes the act of God. But so anyway, I did my scouting and I found this giant oak tree, and there were a lot of oak trees, and it kind of came around the backside of a pond dam, and I noticed it was just a deer highway between where they were bedding. They would come up, hit the water, walk around this oak tree, and they would go to this persimmon grove. And so I set the stand up there, and so anyway, Dad dropped me off, and it was opening morning there in Oklahoma, and I got all situated, and I didn't really know what to expect for that morning, but sure enough, 2 bucks came through. One was a little basket rack, and the other one was a little bigger basket rack. So the way they walked, there was a raccoon down on the water, and they did not like the raccoon, so they gave him a wide berth, and I was afraid it was going to take him off the trail. But they came back right in front of me. So I had about a 10-yard shot from Dad's 500-pound stand there. And I had an old bear whitetail too, with a wasp broadhead. And I forget the name of these arrows. You may remember them, but they had veins, grooves down the spine, supposedly for a blood shaft there. I don't know if that might have been more of a marketing gimmick or anything, but that's what I was using. And anyway, I hit that deer just kind of high on right behind the back shoulder, just dropped him. But he was so close to me, and I was so high. It was, it was in my first archery shot. So how I actually hit the deer, I don't know. My pin was all over the place, but I got him down, and he took about 4 steps, just kind of collapsed there. So after that, I thought that's how all archery shots are. And, as I found out later, you got to chase a lot of them, but that particular one was great. And, so I called my dad, and my dad came down, and it showed him where the deer was. And, we field dressed the deer, and he's just hyperactive, just so excited about, we got this deer. And he's a big guy. He's about 6'3" and about 280, worked at a steel shop his whole life. He grabbed that deer and drug me and the deer through the brush and everything. Like, geez, Dad, we can go around the trail, we don't have to bust brush, but he was just excited. But anyway, that was my most memorable hunt for sure. And I can still picture that tree in my mind right now. But of all of them, that was the most fun. I think really we had as much fun figuring out how the deer were traveling and where to put the deer stand, and figuring out the lay of the land there. And we found out later that when those persimmons are gone, they take a whole different path to get where they're going to go. But it was really a lot of fun to figure all that out.
Yeah, it's always challenging when you start out not knowing what to do. I know when I first started, I've told this several times before, but if I see deer prints in the dirt, it was a good day. At least I knew there was deer in the area.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything. And then finally you go long enough, and then it's like, oh, there's one running in this field, 300 yards away, or we're driving in or driving out. It's like, oh, good day. I got to see a deer. And then you get down, you get a better place, what to do, where to look for them. And then you expect to see them from your tree stand, and may not get shots all the time, but you expect to see them more often because you figured out where they're at, how to hunt them. And, of course, as the years go along, the population is growing, and there's more deer out there to see. And, when I first started there, here in Nebraska, you only had 2 tags. That was it. 2 deer is the max you could get in any one year. And
wow.
Yeah, 2 is all you could get. And then they started to add a few more. So, archery tag was always either sex, muzzle loader is either sex, but your rifle, sometimes they were antlerless only. And then you could pay, you get a buck only tag. But, a lot of them were buck only tags because they're trying to grow the herd. Well, now the herd's grown so big, there's there's times now they have season choice tags, which one tag is good for some, one or two deer, depending on which one they're going with, but for whatever season. For archery during archery season, rifle season, muzzleloader during muzzleloader season. Now here in Nebraska, the month of December is both muzzleloader and archery. Because archery
Oh,
starts
wow.
September 1st and it ends December 31st. It now goes through rifle season. But we have to wear orange during the firearm season.
Oh, got you.
Because people out there with high powered rifles and we need to be seen. But the weird part is here in Nebraska is muzzleloader season is all month of December. We don't have to wear orange as an archer. But the guys holding muzzleloaders have to have orange on, but we don't have to have the orange.
Go figure.
Yeah, go figure.
Maybe they think the muzzleloader hunters aren't very accurate, so they don't have to worry so much about orange.
Yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting that during that time you're out there, but it's December and here in Nebraska, December you could have some really, really cold days.
Oh yeah.
And, in the summertime here, they're predicting 99 today.
Yeah, we're in a big hot spell here. It's supposed to be 102 today and then 106 over the weekend. It's hot all the way up. I've seen the big high pressure thing goes way up north. So
Yeah. And it's been, yesterday was so humid. I was out when it was like 70 degrees and I'm moving some wood chips I got from the tree trimmers out of my garden. And I only do about two wagon loads because it's just too much work. And I soaked my clothes and come and changed them. And I'm just sitting there working on changing the carburetor on one of our mowers. I'm not doing anything except basically sitting here and I'm soaking my clothes. That's how humid it was. And it wasn't hot yet. It was, comfortable temperature. It's just the humidity was so high and, it's like that wears you out.
yeah, I'm really lucky. I have several blocks and 3D targets that I shoot at, and I enjoy doing that. But the only place really on my place is I have about 3 acres here. Is I always have to face the west because I have a few neighbors, and so that gets pretty warm in the afternoon to do that. But the local archery shop just relocated, and they're like 3 miles from my house now. So I
Cool.
joined that right away, and I can go up and shoot in the cool weather as a knock at archery over there for Decatur. But I really enjoy shooting in the air conditioning when I can. But it's more fun. I have a little deer stand out there, and I shoot out of that. So just to kind of practice more realistically. But when it's 106, it's time to go to knock it, shoot there.
And not time to be outside hunting or shooting your bow or being outside doing much of anything with that kind of temperature.
Yeah.
Or at least not for very long anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. I have a buddy, me and Jeremy Leger, we've hunted together now, I think since we tried to figure it out the other day. The nearest we can tell is 2003. And he recently defected to Matthews. I've been shooting a Hoyt for a long time, but I watching him shoot with his Matthews, I'm kind of looking at that. But anyway, we both shot Hoyt for 15 or 20 years. But anyway, he's got a cell camera and he keeps sending me pictures of. He's got like 3 or 4 nice deer that are showing up, and he's laughing at mine because about all I have right now is a couple of spikes. But I keep telling him, well, they're in velvet, so you never know what it's going to be, but they're definitely going to be a spike. That's for sure. But we built a stand. He built it, built the frame, and then we did the rest of it out at the deer lease. But it's the funniest stand. It's only about 6 inches off the ground. He built it as an octagon, and it works out great because we have 2 windows to shoot out of for archery. And I don't know how many deer have been shot out of that thing, but he bought, if you're ever at Lowe's or Home Depot, they have that section where they sell paint that somebody forgot to come back and get. And you can get really good paint for pennies on the dollar. So he bought this paint, and he brought it out, and he thought it was going to be brown. And so we painted it, and it was a little bit pink. And I was teasing him about having a pink stand. And after about 2 weeks in the sun, it turned real pink. And so we chastened it. Then that was the Pink Palace, and his wife, she had a sign made up, and then we put that on the side of it. It was the Pink Palace. But we shot a lot of deer out of the Pink Palace. I said, if you tell anybody you're going to the Pink Palace this weekend, you're probably going to have to elaborate a little bit. Know that you're really going deer hunting. So
yeah, that could be fun though.
Yeah, it's a great stand though, but it was pink, as pink as it could be. But
yeah, I went to the Pink Palace and I brought a deer home.
That I brought a deer home. So he's an engineer, and he can never just buy anything off the shelf without tweaking it. So he he bought a welder, and he built this, we call it the Hulk. It must hold 2,000 pounds of corn. And this thing is humongous. And just instead of buying a normal spinner, like you would a little 12-volt battery and spring, he wanted it to only go in one direction. So he built a pin around this thing, kind of built in a rectangle, and put the Hulk at one end, and then bought a spinner that you would use for catfish feeders, because they only shoot in one direction out across the water. And so it shoots one direction, but he souped this thing up. When it goes off, it sounds like a Gatling gun. And then he's got a piece of tin at the other end, because it throws so much corn that it bangs off the tin. As you're sitting there, and get there in the dark, and it's nice and dark, and then the sun comes up, and when that thing goes off, it is so loud, it will scare you, because it's nice and quiet, and all of a sudden this thing goes off like an A-10 Warthog in Afghanistan or something. But yeah, it's nice and cold, but it will wake you up first thing in the morning, that's for sure.
Yeah, you think it'd chase all the deer out of the area, but they probably get used to that sound, and it's like, okay, dinner time. Dinner
Exactly right. You're exactly right. But I had a buddy that swore up and down he was going to record the feeder going off and play that. If there's no deer around, if it's quiet that morning, he'll play it again, instead of, because they have a remote control, you can just spin it again if you want to, but then you're just throwing more corn out there. But he said, I'm just going to play the recording. They'll hear the recording come out. So I guess we need to talk to Fox Pro and have them add that as a sound on their squealer.
Yeah, that would be. But it wouldn't work if you didn't have that there that's providing feed out there for them. So
yeah. Where I'm at, my deer lease is over near on the other side of Bowie, Texas, and it is just so dry. Food plots are really hard if you're not going to have a way to water there. So if you're lucky enough to be around a large body of water, or a dry weather creek, then you could plant along that. But otherwise, it's pretty hard to get anything to stay at where we're at. So we run the corn feeders and protein, and the protein really helps the not just the bucks, but all the deer during the summer, because everything burns up this time of year right now. They're not moving very far. They're close to water and close to food, and they just kind of stay there. But it does help, really does help.
Yeah, because they need water, and if you don't have water for them, they're going to find water somewhere and stay there. And like you said, in Texas, the growing season isn't during the summer like it is up here. Here we've got all kinds of stuff. The grasses are growing, the beans are coming up, the corn's up. They have all the food they want now. Yeah, you're the opposite though. You don't have food there naturally.
Yeah, last year was especially tough because of the drought where we're at. There were a lot of farmers didn't even plant wheat. They just let the field go because they couldn't. The yield that they would get was for the fuel and everything that they were going to have to pay. It just wasn't worth it. So they didn't even plant wheat. So if you didn't have a corn feeder around, it was the deer were their patterns changed quite a bit because they moved to where they could get food.
Right.
So that was pretty tough last year. But this year the grain prices are up, so there are more guys saying they're going to plant more wheat. I have a wheat field about a mile away, and I'm kind of between the wheat field and the bedding areas. So they'll come by, and I have a pond there, and they'll kind of hit the pond and hit the corn feeder on their way to the wheat. And of course, hogs come through there pretty quick. That where we're at, the rancher makes you build put hog panels around. So Texas A&M did a study, and they came out and said, you need a minimum of 6 hog panels for a feeder to keep the hogs away. But the feeder will still throw corn past that, so they'll come through and vacuum it up every once in a while. But hogs, for archery in Texas, that is a great warm up. It's for setting up a tree and just you get an opportunity to do a little scouting and see what deer are coming through. And this time of year, of course, they're coming in really late, and they usually you don't see much in the mornings. But those hogs will come through, and it's just really good practice. And then if you can get him field dressed quick enough, it's still pretty good table fare as well.
Yeah. If you have to track them in that heat very long.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. I used to do the thermal hunts, when I was guiding hog hunts, and so I had some of my favorite guys. They're in the Air Force. They came out from Vegas, and they wanted to do the thermal, and so we got them all set up. And I told them, and they wanted some pork to take home. So I said, well, if you get one down, you need to call me right away, because this was like July 4th weekend. I said, if you
yeah.
shoot one, I need to get him. We need to get him, dressed and on ice as quick as possible. And so they were like, fine. Well, a big group of hogs came in. They put one down, and it dropped right under the feeder. Well, then the ones, they could see them with the night vision, running out through the grass and down into this dry creek. But they didn't run off. So they were thinking they were going to come back, and they did. They shot another one. And then they thought another one would come back. So they were watching this. Well, they got so wrapped up in all that, they called me about an hour and a half after the last one had been shot. So I got there, and I was like, man, guys, I don't know. This is probably spoiled. We might be better off just to drag this down, slice it open, and we'll shoot whatever coyotes come in. And they wanted to eat it. So we took it back, and we hung that up, and we started peeling the skin off that, and the meat was just a bright yellow. And he was like, is the meat supposed to be that color? I'm like, no. And his son, I thought, was going to throw up. He was helping me pull that skin off. It smelled bad. So that ended up being put on our coyote pile out there. So it had already spoiled. At that time of night here, it's still in the 90s. So.
Yeah, I know. I've shot some up here, and in the morning time, it's easier to find them, but you don't have much time to get to them and get them cleaned. Early season, September, we can still have pretty hot days.
Yeah.
And you shoot them in the evening. A lot of times it cools off, so they're okay in the evening when you get later in the season. But early season, if you can't find them right away, they're going to be spoiled by the time you get to them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as bad as down in Texas, because you're a little hotter normally during the hunting season than we are, but it's still
got to where
one of those things that you got to be thinking of.
Yeah, we got to where if we could get to them quick enough, we would at least try to just strap them out and take the back straps, because a lot of times by the time you got it back, it would be too late. But if you get the back straps out, throw them in an ice chest, be all right. We used to, if the guys wanted to, some of the guys wanted to take it home, but and just depending on how many guys were in camp that day. But we would take those back straps off, clean them up, and we would toss them in a crock pot, throw Dr. Pepper on them, and then come back that evening, and then we'd have pulled pork sandwiches. It was really good, about as fresh as it got.
Yeah. That's probably the best deer I had was I was out hunting and I shot one, got home, I cleaned it, pulled out the tenderloins and fired up the grill and stuck them right on the grill. And then I'm out there, I've got and I got my fork and my knife in my hand. And because they always taper, get smaller, so the ends get done first. So I put my fork in it, cut off a piece, eat it, cut off the other piece on each one. And I'm just working my way as it's cooking in. I'm eating it as it's cooking. It hadn't been dead for 12 hours hardly yet, and I'm already eating it. It's like, oh man, that was really good meat that way.
Yeah, that's definitely filled the table there.
Yeah.
Well, we had a good time with the hog hunting out there, and then we did some turkey hunting as well, and always had a good group of guys, and never ever had any issues. So it was a lot of fun. And my friend Jeremy, myself, and Kevin Kelly, we were more bow hunters than anything. It gets late in the season, you fill the freezer, we would do that, but we usually had a target buck we were after. And when we first started out there, a stand was basically some screw-in steps and a 2x4 across a couple of Ys in the tree.
Oh.
but as we got older, those turned into nice bow blinds and stuff like that. We didn't feel like, there was one tree that it was a great spot. It was on a tree line that you like to travel, but the tree was a look, certain spots in Texas, trees are kind of hard to come by. So you had to make whatever you could into a tree stand. But anyway, we had this 2x4, and you literally stood in the Y of the tree and kind of leaned up against the 2x4. And I just couldn't hunt it because they built the 2x4 was, you're supposed to sit on it. Well, I'm so tall, it was really made for somebody who's a little shorter than me. But the other thing is, when the wind came, that tree would just sway back and forth. And I was always thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to keep my pin on anything swaying back and forth like this. So if it was a windy day, that was not a great place. But by the time we left, we had really nice stands set up everywhere. But
I remember one time I was in a tree. It was probably 6 or 8 inch diameter tree, and the tree stand was up in there, and we're up 15 feet or something like that. And in the morning it's not too windy, but then wind will pick up. So I'm up in this tree stand, and the wind is picked up. Of course, the deer aren't going to be walking around when the wind's blowing that hard. They're either going to be sitting or running. And I'm in there. It's like, there's no way I can even draw my bow. I was hanging on to the ladder stand, or the tree stand, the hang on stand, so I didn't get blown out of the tree. I had my safety belt on, but I'm hanging on to it because it's moving so much. And it's like, okay, come on. Let's wait for the wind to calm down a little bit and get out.
Yeah, my brother was notorious for bare minimum stands. So he's a welder too, and he welded up this little chain on stand, and it was pretty small. And my brother's about 6'3", 250, so he's a big boy. And our cousin Lonnie would hunt with us, and Lonnie's he was probably 6'2", 290. He's a big boy, played football and everything. But anyway, we had this monster buck that Lonnie had told us about, and we set up on him. And I never did see that deer on the hoof, but Freddie and Lonnie had both seen him, and they were hunting hard because he was probably a 170, which for around there was a really big deer. And Lonnie was up there hunting one morning, and it was during as the rut was starting, and that deer came through. And when Lonnie stood up, my brother's little chain, I don't guess it was weight rated for Lonnie's weight, because it just kind of cocked about 4 inches. And so he had to stop and hold on. And of course the deer heard it and it busted. And he was giving us a hard time about that stand. And we were telling him, well, we need to know what we need to rate this at. Are you going to be gaining any more weight? So we were giving each other a hard time about that. But we hunted that deer and we just never seen him. And the game warden called us and he knew we'd leased that property. And he said, I just wanted to let you know that you're getting spotlighted at night. He said, because we think we know who it is, but we just can't catch them. And then about 3 weeks later, my cousin Debbie called me and she said, Todd, she goes, there's a giant deer at the gate on your lease. And it's just laying there. So we drove out there and we called the game warden thing, and somebody had shot it from our gate and drug it to the gate and cut its, took its head in the cape and left the rest of the deer just laying. It was a giant deer, but we were looking and they didn't, the way they caped it, I don't know how you would mount it. They caped it way in front of the shoulders and everything. So they're probably going to have to buy, a different height for it, if anything. But, we called all the taxidermy places and the game warden did a bunch of checking, but we never could find who done it. But it was a shame, but, I told Lonnie, I said, I don't think that deer was meant for you this year, man. But
Yeah.
But it was a good deer. It was a really good deer.
Yeah, it's kind of bad when you get somebody do that, because it, not only that, but they're poaching the deer, but it gives the hunters a bad name. Let's come in here and they just shot it and took the head and left the rest of it sitting there. And somebody that really doesn't know what's going on goes by and see this deer laying on side the road with the head missing. Figure, oh well, that's what hunters do. But that's not what hunters do.
No. No, because that deer would have fed your family for a while. It was a big deer. But
oh yeah.
I hate that. We always, we enjoy, my whole family enjoys, venison and turkey and ducks and whatever. But it's kind of funny. My daughter, she would always take, she always wanted the, cause I cut the backtrack up and we make this like filet mignon, we bacon wrap it, smash peppercorn on the top of it and all that's really good. And so that's what she wanted. But now she's got 4 sons and she wants anything, hamburger, chili grind, it don't matter. She wants it all. As those boys, they eat, she's always telling me how much they eat, but and last year, my oldest grandson shot 2 does, so they got to fill their freezer up, and she was pretty happy about that. So,
yeah, they eat that much deer. They need to learn how to hunt and get it themselves.
Yeah, and I make them come out and field feeders, and we trim shooting lanes and stuff like that, and so and they love it. To them, it's not, they just love being out there, but they're just, well, I say that Matic is just getting big enough to where he could hunt with his bow, but they all have a bow, but they have the little green starter kit with the little plastic flipper on there and all that, but they love it. Actually, Knock at Archery, they are really big into they have a home group bunch of kids that come in, and it started there, and they go around to different youth competitions for archery, and then expanded into the Decatur school system. So they have several groups of kids that they run an archery program, and they go around to other towns and compete, and they really do well. The kids just love it. So it's fun to watch them get involved like that. Now, sometimes I'm up there shooting and I look at him and I'm like, I don't know if I want to shoot next to this kid. He ain't missed. He's sitting here dotting X's all day. So.
Yeah, and it's like, wait a minute, he's out shooting me. I better shoot better then, right?
Yeah, because a lot of them are shooting with a kind of a modified longbow looking thing, and I'm over there with $2,000 worth of archery equipment, and I'm like, I don't really want to be missing with all of this, and he's over there dotting X's with that thing, So, but they have a little bit of everything now. they have a big program too for, you know, the indoor shoot. So they shoot a lot with the unlimited bows with the, not necessarily the kids, but the adults. They have all the tricked out bows and everything. So
Yeah, I don't have two new bows. My hunting bow is a 2001 PSE, and the one I use for 3Ds and stuff like that, shooting field tips, is a 2003 PSE, and
yeah.
I was a PSE dealer.
Okay, gotcha. They're big PSE there. That matter of fact, I don't know if it was PSE or Elite. Their Archery Tech won the World Indoor Championship 2 years ago, I believe it was. I don't remember. I know he shoots both Elite and PSE. I don't remember which bow he had that time with him, but
Yeah, I know
they're a
when
big
I
PSE
had
shop.
my store, was, you know, a little over 20 years ago. I was a PSE dealer, and I sold a lot of the Nova bows because I
Uh-huh.
catered to beginners and teaching them going. And I sold more PSE bows than all the shops in town together combined, because that's my main bow. I stock PSE, and someone with an open mind to come in and shoot my top of the line PSEs would pick that over a Matthews if they didn't have the attitude that Matthews is the best with an open mind. But the only shooters I could not get out of their bow into a PSE was Hoyt shooters.
Oh yeah, I love my Hoyt.
Yeah, Hoyts. Now those shit Matthews that bought into the advertisement, it's the best, and it's like, okay, this is the best. Now, are they good bows? Oh yeah, they are good bows. I had one before I be PSE, before I was a PSE dealer, had a Matthews Q2, and when I bought the store and become a dealer, I'm going down to Tucson to go to the dealer school for a week to learn how to, work on bows, make strings, make cables. Back then is when we made steel cables.
Oh wow.
Now, if you have a bow with steel cable and it breaks, forget it. To find somebody that's going to make you a cable is tough, because there's not many bow techs out there now, unless you get somebody like me that's been around since the 60s and worked on those kind of bows. You're not going to find somebody that knows how to make it, and you're not going to be able to afford it if you can even find a cable to replace it. Last I heard, you could get them about $100 a piece
Oh wow.
for the cable, and you have to replace both. If one breaks, you have to do both, because on a steel cable, you can't twist them. There is no twisting. You have to make them the exact same length. If you're off by 1/8 of an inch, you're remaking one of them,
No way.
because you can't
Wow.
twist them.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
the regular strings, you just twist them a little bit. If it's a bit more, put half a dozen more twists in it. You can take up that 1/16 of an inch or
Yeah.
32nd of an inch, but you can't do that with steel cables, because you can't twist the steel cable.
I never thought about that. I never thought. I shot probably the most bow that I've shot deer with is a PSE Carroll Intruder.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's an
that
old one.
that's all round wheel, but that thing, it was really smooth to pull back, but if you had to let down, there was no big jerk. You just kind of rode it down, but one day I shot a lot of deer with that thing, and one day I had a deer jump the string on me, and I was convinced it was the bow and not me. But when the deer was looking right at me when I let it go, it is
Well,
spun on
yeah.
me. But I'm like, man, now I've got enough experience. I know you probably wouldn't have mattered what bow it was; it would have spun on
Yeah.
me. But that bow was it was smooth and forgiving, and I really like that. But I have my Hoyt now, and I shoot with it, and it's a Hoyt Nitrum long draw. I have a 32-inch draw, so I shoot that, and I shoot a lot of 3D. I like the tournaments, 3D tournaments. I like to shoot those when I can. So, but they're a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah, they are fun. I haven't shot one in a while, but they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was a group of us. There was about 4 of us that would show up at each tournament, and they were all in the same class. And we gave each other so much grief over the years, but they 2 of them moved up class, and the other guy moved away So it's not as fun when, when you don't know anybody, but I probably should go more often than I do. But it seems like it's a lot of different faces out there now.
Yeah, I had a guy I used to go with all the time while he was still alive. We'd go, and we didn't care what position we was in the whole tournament. That really didn't make any difference. My goal was I wanted to score an average of 8 on a whole tournament. If there's 40, I want to score an average of an 8. That meant I had to average to kill on every one of the 40 shots. And my goal was to beat Randy, his score. And his was to beat mine. Because who had to take the crap on the way home, and who got to give it on the way home?
Exactly.
Next week, it might change. We're close enough to, sometimes he'd win, sometimes I'd win. And it didn't matter if we were last and next to last or first and second. A lot of them did flights anyway. So, the bad part, if you're number 11, you got first, but if you're number 10, you got last. It's like you group them in, 10 in a group or something. And,
right.
it's not a great big one. I can see why they do it, because it makes, beginners, intermediate, and advanced. But, the guy that you beat by 1 point got first place and you got last.
Yeah,
because it bumps
exactly.
you up in the brackets. And
yeah, that's the way me and my brother are when we shoot. I was up in we shot an ASA tournament in Oklahoma, and he's that guy is something else. He shoots 70-pound draw weight, and he works with steel all day long, and so he's got shoulders like Dick Buckus, but when he pulls back, he's just a rock. There's no movement. He's just a really good shot. So anyway, like you say, to me, I had to stop with who has the better score at the end, because I knew he would, and I had to start giving him grief on targets, because it's like, who won this target, because I knew he was going to win overall. So if I happened to beat him on one target, I'd give him grief. But there was one tournament we were in, and he had shot that particular range a couple of times, and he was really giving me some good pointers and stuff. And so they kind of kept the same. They might have varied the yardage a little bit, but in general, it was the same shot as we went along. And there was a deep ravine, and they built a platform out over the ravine. So you had to walk out across the platform and shoot at a crouching lion on the opposite side of the ravine. And it was wooded. So he's like, you got to be real careful with this and aim a lot lower than you think. And I was like, well, that doesn't really make sense. It seems like I would want to aim right at the top of the shoulder. Then he pointed at this limb that went out across the ravine. It was a giant cottonwood tree. It had this big limb, and that limb probably had 400 arrows stuck in it. And he's like, that's why. He goes, aim way low, because the trajectory of your arrow, you're going to catch that limb. And it was funny, as we went on past that target, you would just hear somebody just cursing the wind over there. We're like, he hit the limb. Yep, that guy hit the limb. So I was so glad. He goes, he told me later, he goes, I so wanted to just let you shoot the limb. I told him, Freddie, I would have let you shoot the limb for sure. I'm telling you right now, you would have just been short an arrow.
Well, that's the thing you don't think about it. It's a 40-yard shot, but you got your 40-pin line out. Now, what's at your 30, what's at your 20, and what's 10, and what is 5 feet away from you, because that can change things too. If you think you're shooting over it, those real close shot, like 5 feet. What do you have 5 feet in front of you? That's why some people in blinds will shoot through their blind when they don't want to, because where your eyes are at, your pins are at, or up here by your eyes. Well, the arrow's down by your mouth, or even lower, depending on your anchor point. So up close, it's going to be really low. And I had one time I was at a tournament, and it was on a platform like you're talking about, but they had a gator about 5 feet away. Now you're up probably, I don't know, probably 10, 12 steps. So you're up, 7, 8 feet, 10 feet. I forget how far he was now. It wasn't really high, but it was almost a 45-degree angle. And at that time I had a program that would figure out your your pins, the distance, and tell you where they're at. I don't know if I even have the program anymore, but I don't think it'll work on the new PCs anyway. But I was looking at it's like 5 feet. I looked on my little chart. It's like, oh, I need to shoot it for 70 yards. It's 5 feet away. I'm shooting it for 70 yards. And all these arrows are just all over this place. So, of course, I'm leaning down. I'm bending and bending at the waist, If my 70-yard pin gets there, and I go ahead and release. That's right where we're supposed to go. And of course, now I had to have some help almost to get back up. I was leaning over so far. But that's the thing people don't understand is you got to think of those different distances. And that tree was probably there exactly. And then you're tall, which changes it. I might be able to go in there and shoot right where it's at, because I'm only 5'9". But you're 8 inches taller than him, so you're up 8 inches higher. So, that makes a difference. And then, where you're at, is it at the same height or is it down low? If it's down lower, it's going to look to be a longer shot.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the part that, I used to tell a lot of people, it's like, do you know what a 3, 4, 5 triangle is? All carpenters know that. That's how you figure out a right angle. You measure out 3 up 4, the angle is 5. That's a right angle. And I'll tell people, okay, let's pretend like the trail is 30 yards away. You're up on a hill, up on a tree. You're 40 yards up. So when you look at that, your range, it looks like it's 50 yards. What do you shoot it for? And most people, if they don't know that, they get it all wrong. Well, it's a 50-yard shot. No, you just shot over it. You completely missed it. You got to shoot it for 30. But they don't understand. Lots of times they're told this. Gravity works straight down. Gravity don't work at angles. So
that's right.
It's going to drop based on the horizontal distance it travels. It traveled 30 yards. It's going to drop based on a 30-yard shot. And I had a shot like that. I was on top of a hill, up in my ladder stand, up 15 feet up. And I knew the trail because what I do is I look at the trail and I'll go straight up. I'll find a tree and I'll range to that. That's until I got, one of these little range finders. I just got one. I think it was last year. It's the first year I had one. So I've found out them without it. So I had to figure out how to tell the yardages. So I'm ranging to the tree straight across. That I'll find a tree and I'll come up. Okay, that is a 20-yard shot. Look at the trail. The deer come by. That deer, the size of that deer looked like it was a 40-yard shot all day long. You would have swore that deer is 40 yards away. It's 20. I shot it for 20 and I got it. It looked like it was 40. And sometimes you can use your pins as kind of a rangefinder. Once you learn them on a deer-sized target, it's not going to work too well on other than deer. But if I can get all 5 of my pins in the kill zone, I know this deer is close. So it doesn't matter which one I pick. And then it starts to, okay, now my 20 and my 60 are at the back and the belly, and then and it's okay, it's about 20, and then as I can't do it, and I have to use more and more, then I know it's a little bit further and further, and but I ain't got time to figure that out. I got to figure it out before that. So that's what I'll do. And I've even taken a 30-foot rope, because it gives me 10 yards. I had a loop on one end, and I'd hook it on my bottom peg, and I'd go out. I'd put a little marker right there, put a little flag or something where I knew that, okay, that's 10 yards, and I'd take it off, and I'd go from there. There's 20 yards. There's 30 yards, 40 yards, and I'd mark these spots like in an open field. You have nothing to range against. So until I learned a little bit better how to judge yardage, I'm putting markers out in there so I can see. I put this little orange flag or something. I tied it to a twig, or I put some marker out there where I can find it, and so I learned how the distances was, how far it was and what it looked like, and now I've learned in one of the classes I took when I was in college was in an orientating class, where you're doing hiking and map reading and stuff like that. And I learned how to step off. So I know in there, you don't count every step, you count every other one. So you start with the left foot, and then every time the right foot would hit, you'd count one. And I know 20 yards is 11 and a half steps. So I walked that off 20 yards, walk that off 40 yards. So I can walk it off. I'm close enough that it doesn't matter if I'm off by 3 or 4 feet. It doesn't matter because I'm not taking them super long shots anyway.
Right.
Being older, I don't see as well anymore, so I can't see the deer very clear out, them really long ranges. So I kind of stay, 40 yards and less because I can see them there.
Yeah, I had a buddy that he brought his first bow and was really nervous about judging distance because he figured that's where he would mess up. And he bought some of that trail marking tape.
Yeah.
And every 10 yards he tied it to something. So he was having the worst time. He not one to sit still very well up in the tree, I guess. But anyway, he was always so nervous about judging his distance. And I was out there one day and he asked me to pull his trail card, his SD card out of his trail camera for him. And I took all of his markers off and I left him on his bunk at the bunk house. He did not see the humor in that whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, 30 minutes later, he would just start letting me have it. So he was, that lasted all weekend. He's like, he couldn't believe I did that. But I said, man, I said, you probably don't need no more confidence than you have. You don't need to be shooting more than 20 yards anyway. So
right.
He was just really nervous, but he had it marked out all the way to 60 yards. And I was just cracking up. I'm like, you do not need to be taking a 60-yard shot. You're so nervous. But if it's actually a buck, you're going to be lucky to keep a pin on the deer at all, as nervous as you are. But he ended up that year. He did shoot a doe at the end of the year, and it made a great shot. So that he got the monkey off his back. But
yeah, no, that's like a lot of new archers or new hunters period, whether it's deer hunting with a rifle and a bow, whatever your weapon is. Yeah, the first deer that comes by, shoot it. Don't worry about what it is. Shoot it. Now, after that, let's talk about not shooting fawns.
Yeah.
If a fawn comes by, it's the only one there, and you want to shoot the fawn, go right ahead. But after that, let's talk about letting the fawns walk and shooting the does. And early season, if a doe comes by with a fawn, I let them both pass.
Right.
I had actually had one time the doe come walking in with a fawn. The fawn bedded down about 15 yards from my tree. The doe goes walking off. And the fawn just sat there. And I'm just watching it. It's like, now, if another doe would have come through from the same direction they come from, I'd have shot that one. But later on, that doe come back, and then the doe and the fawn come walking off.
Really? That's funny.
Yeah. It was like, I could have shot it many times. But, it's not my first deer. I wasn't going to shoot the fawn. When you first start out, it's like, I could never figure out to tell whether, because up here, by the time archery season starts, spots are gone. So you can't really tell. You can see the spots, then it's a fawn up here because, the only one spots are fawns up here. They don't have deer up here. They have spots all the time. So finally, on one of those hunting shows, most of the hunting shows, they just show you hunting. They don't teach you anything. And one of the hunting shows, I actually made a mistake one time and taught something on how to tell if it's adult or a fawn. And you look at the nose to the back of the head and where are the eyes. If the eyes are closer to the nose than the back of the head, it's a fawn. If the eyes are in the middle, if you look at the deer that you have back there, the distance between the eyes and the back of the head is shorter than the eyes and the nose. Those are adults.
I did not know
that. Now I can tell. I just look at the head and see where the eyes are in relationship. Because as they're born, the eyes and nose is shorter and is getting older and older. So by the time they're a year and a half old, the nose is longer than the eyes, the back of the head. And
that makes sense.
One of those hunting shows made a mistake and actually and now when I look at them, it's like, this guy is shooting way too much draw weight, way too much movement. I don't know how you're ever getting shot on these deer, because they'll draw back and they'll just arch their back way back and pull it across their chest and then raise it up. Like, that's too much weight.
Oh yeah.
Improper draw technique, which means you can't pull as much weight. You're working because now you're using your arm muscles to draw it. And it's like, if they would just come up, use the back muscles and pull it. And I always taught all my students, if you can't draw it back slowly, like a deer is watching you, it's too much weight. Crank it down.
Yeah.
And you can build up to, if you want to shoot more weight. My first bow was 52 pounds, and that's all I could shoot for a long time. And I'm cranking it up, and I'm working, and I can't get it anymore. And finally, I get it up to 62 pounds. And I was like going, and then I got a little bit over that. And then I was able to go clear up 70. But it took a long time, a lot of shooting to even get to 60 pounds from 52, because I didn't have my archer muscle and I wasn't drawing it correctly anyway. Because that was before I learned how to do it correctly. So I'm doing it wrong to start with. I'm not using my strong muscles on my back. I'm using my weaker arm muscles, and it took me a long time to get there. And you don't need a lot of weight. I shoot better at 70 than I do at 60, just because it helps me lock into my form a little bit better. So as I draw back, helps, because if it's a little lighter, I don't have to work quite so hard, and it just seems to be a little mushy for me. But each person's different.
Right.
Would I recommend everybody shooting 70 pounds? No, because if you can't comfortably draw it back, it's too much weight.
Yeah, I shoot about, I think 65 is what I shoot. But I was recently I was at a 3D tournament, and there was a new shooter that was in our group. And when we first started, he shot great. He was scoring right there with the best of us. But as we got further along, it was like you said, he's aiming at the Empire State Building and trying to pull this thing back, and he's all arms, and he was really struggling. And I told him, I said, man, he told me then he hadn't been shooting that long, and it was a new bow for that year. And I was like, you really should just pull back on your or dial back on your draw weight, because we're shooting 16 targets here. By the time we get to 8, you can't pull back anymore. So, and until you get your back muscles strengthened up, just pull back. Even if you're shooting at 60, you're still going to kill a deer. So
right. Yeah. I killed my first year at 42, and it was back when they had aluminum arrows, a 2117 full length, 145 grain Muzzy broadhead on it, 52 pounds, and the deer was 40 yards away. And when I shot, that deer turned around, and I think all but the fletching had gone through that deer. I had a heavy arrow because the 2117s were heavy arrows, and then a big heavy tip on it. So a lot of weight behind there. Now I shoot 100 grain Muzzy, and I don't have near as heavy of arrow because I'm shooting carbon arrows. But my hunting arrows are a little over 400 grains. My target arrows are, I think, 360, 370.
Yeah, I shoot the Easton injections, and my draw link's so long that I don't even have to cut them or anything. It's just what they come with. That's how long they are. But the one thing about the draw link though is pop-ups. Shooting a pop-up, I have to be careful, because I've more than once I've had my my top limb slap the side of the pop-up, so I have to set all the way to the back to shoot through it. But so once a year you got to do that, so you get that out of your system. But I used to practice out of a pop-up, but the last couple of years it's been really warm all the way right up to bow season. So I try to only do that when I have to. But
yeah, it's kind of tough down there when it's that hot and in an enclosure. And I know I went down there down in southern part of Texas, hog hunting and javelina hunting, and I got a javelina, and that was interesting. It was actually pretty good meat. But I went down. I told them I want to archery hunt. Well, they didn't set up the archery stands. They set up the rifle ones. So I'm standing in one I
Oh,
can't shoot my bow out of because none of the openings are such that I can shoot out of them. So I'm basically
right.
standing in the doorway and waiting for him. And like the 3-day hunt and the third day, nothing was wincing anything. So the guy I was hunting with, he'd doing a rifle, so he let me use his rifle, and so at least I could get something, because
Right.
finally something come by, and um, he was videoing it on the old VCR cameras,
Oh,
and
yeah.
at the time I had a VCR player that I could go frame advance, and I'm looking, it's like, oh, where did the bullet hit? So I go back and I'm frame in advance, and one frame I caught the vapor trail from the bullet on a VCR camera. One frame.
No way. That's
Yeah, it's like
awesome.
cool. And then I wanted to see where I hit, Um, and I was like, that was cool. I have no clue where that video is anymore, but or no way
I
to play it where you could stop it because now they're just play and pause.
I had a friend, Tammy Beach. She from South Texas, and she called me and she said, "You're not going to believe what happened to me." All she ever did was bow hunt, and so she was in a pop up, and she's sitting and she goes, I had my chair, and she goes, I had everything set up, and she said this little mouse came in, and he was just kind of wandering around, and she said I was messing with him, and she said I would poke him with an arrow and he would squeak and he'd run around, and I'd see him again, I'd poke him, and she goes, didn't think anything about him squeaking or run around in the blind. And she said, I happened to glance to the left because she said I would watch in my window, and right under the window, a big rattlesnake stuck his head up through the flap
Oh,
there. And he came in, and she said he was after that stupid mouse. And so she said he's huge. And so he notices her, and she said he didn't really just go into the classic coil to strike, but
right.
he's just kind of looking at her and he's flipping his tongue out. But she said he's right in front of the door. And she says, I can't get out. She goes,
Oh, yeah.
so she said, I'm just looking at him and he's looking at me, and then the mouse would move and he would look at the mouse. So she said, I reached over and I grabbed the back of the blind, and that was where one of the stakes was. And she said, I kind of pulled the stake out. And she said, when he looked at the mouse, she said, I just flipped that thing over and I went running. And she got back to the truck and called her husband, and he came down there. She wasn't hunting that blind anymore. So they went down there and there was no snake or no mouse. So she goes, I guess he got the mouse and left. I don't know. But she said it was tense. She goes, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. She said, my heart was just pounding. She said, I did not want to get bit by that snake, but
Well, he wanted the mouse, and
yeah.
she probably could have just stayed there, and then it went out after the mouse. Keep poking a mouse, make it squeal, and probably the snake would have probably got the mouse and then run off, and
Yeah.
and
And he didn't want her any more than she wanted him, probably.
right.
So after that, she was like, I'm not ever letting a mouse in my blind again.
Yeah. Well, the snake says, "Oh, sounds like a free meal here."
I told her she was a real bow hunter. She would have just shot it with her bow, and she didn't think that was funny at all. She said, I thought I was going to have a heart attack, but she had her pistol with her, but she said, she goes, my heart was pounding so hard. I didn't want to shoot and miss and then get bit, because we're all in, wasn't like he had anywhere really to go. So
Yeah. Well, and if you have a pistol, if you have birdshot in it, that that's a little better for snakes, because you have multiple pellets instead of just one.
yeah, I
Yeah.
alternate for my backup when I go bow hunting. I alternate birdshot and a hollow point. Just I never know whether I'm gonna have a pig situation or a snake situation, so I'm kind of covered for. Of course, if it is a pig, I'm only going to really change his mind about anything every other shot. But
Yeah.
at least I got a chance at it. But
Yeah. Yeah, I know up here, it used to be during archery season, you couldn't carry any firearms at all. And now that last year when I was at the Nebraska as an outdoor expo, and I was up there helping out with the archery stuff, and the wards were there, and I asked them about it. They says, yeah, you can, as long as it's not longer than 5 inches or something, because it's not really hunting. So now I know legally I can carry my handgun with me, in case something comes up, but we don't have, here in this part of Nebraska, we don't have the rattlesnakes like they do
Oh,
out in the western Nebraska. They have rattlesnakes out there.
yeah,
We don't have the bears. We do have pigs. Not as many running wild as you do down there, but there are areas where we have some wild pigs, but we do have lions, mountain lions. They are in the area. I have seen them a few times.
oh, wow.
And game and parks, they denied it for the longest time until one got hit on the highway out here, and then they couldn't deny it anymore.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'd seen one night coming home from a hunting area. We're driving down, Mike and I are going down the road, and it's like, run across it. It was a small one. It's like, no, that's a lion.
yeah,
And then coming out of our hunting area one time on the big brown bales, it's like we've seen something set up on top. It's not a coyote, wrong color. And we get, we're looking a little closer, and sure enough, it's a lion sitting there, and not too far from the farmer's house. They're there, and the farmer said, yeah, back in the 60s they used to see prints in the mud. Back in the 60s they were there. As we move in more houses, less area, they're going to be out finding someplace to go.
right.
They're not going to just disappear.
Yeah, their
You know,
territory is so big.
right.
You know,
So we don't
I
have a
was
lot.
I was bow hunting the Jeffrey's property, and had a nice about 130-pound hog came in and was messed around the feeder there, and I thought, that's perfect eating size, and it was nice and cool, and I'm going to take this hog. So I shot, made a good shot at double lunged him, but he went under the fence and he kind of ran, and I kind of see him wobbling back there. So I gave him a little bit and walked back there, and they don't bleed just a ton, but anyway, it was pretty easy to find him, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, what is he doing? And he was laying right next to he literally ran about 50 yards and just kind of collapsed right next to a newborn calf. This calf is laying there and it's still wet. The calf is just kind of trying to stay real still, and this pig's laying right up against it. So I walked over there, and I thought, man, this is kind of odd. I'm looking for mom. I don't want mama cow to come in and get upset that I'm over here, next to the calf. And so anyway, I got about 20 feet from this hog, and I guess he was just heaving, and I could see him heaving. And I thought, well, I don't want to just finish him off with my pistol with this calf right next to him. So I
Right.
thought, I'm going to go over and see if I can't just maybe poke him and have him run off. Well, I got about 20 feet from him, and he sees me, spins around, and just charges me. So I'm trying to get my pistol out, and I'm backing up, and I decided to just let my bow drop, and I got stuck in a mesquite tree, and I thought, oh man, just don't let him get you on the ground. But he didn't have enough lung capacity to go very far, so he kind of wobbled over to the left and fell down, and then mama cow come busting through the brush, and I thought, okay, great, I'm not gonna get like a hog. I'm gonna get mauled by this cow. She come running, and luckily she just stopped right over that calf, and she was huffing and puffing and stomping her foot. And so I just decided this hog is not worth it. I'll come back later. So I backed out of there, and I'm talking to mama cow, trying to calm her down. Every step I took backwards, she took a step forward. And so finally I got to the fence, and then her and the calf, I just kind of watched them, and her and the calf went busting off a little bit later, and I was able to go in there and get my bow and drag that hog out of there. But that was a tense moment. I wasn't sure which one was going to hurt me the worst, the hog or that mama cow. I'm sure it would have been mama cow, but Luckily, nothing happened bad, but that was some tense moments there. That's one of those ones you go back to the truck and just kind of shake for a little bit and try to calm down.
Well, as it turned out, you should have just left this there because it probably would have died, on you.
Yeah,
But they
yeah,
come up and seen you and wanted to charge you, and it used its last breath to try and get you. And
yeah, yeah. That that's not out of all the hog hunting that we did and the guiding and everything. That's really the closest that we ever had. Usually if we busted one after a bit, it would just run off and we'd come back and get it. But that really was really the only close call I ever had. My buddy Jeremy was bow hunting and he had shot a doe, and it made it to this wheat field, and he was just walking over to cross the fence, and there was just a bunch of brush where had kind of grown up around the fence, and it was full of baby pigs. And he walked up
oh,
there, and it was kind of getting dusky dark, and these pigs went just flying everywhere, just squealing, and he could hear the rest of the mama were down into this creek, and they come flying up out of the creek. But they have really bad vision, luckily. And so he just climbed up on this corner post there of the fence, and he said that those pigs just ran haphazard, going in every direction. And finally, he pulled out his pistol and just kind of had to shoot in the ground to scare them all off, because I think the mama hog was trying to get them to go to the creek, but they were so spooked they were just running in every direction. And finally she got him out of there, and he was able to retrieve his doe after that. But that for both of us, that was probably our closest call with a hog, but luckily nobody got hurt.
yeah, that's one thing. They'll turn around and attack you. Most animals, when you shoot them, they run off. But hogs, will come back and do that. And I don't know about bears or not, but they're big animal. You don't drop them pretty quick, they can come after you.
Oh
They can
yeah,
climb up the tree after you. So
yeah. Yeah, there's not many places to hide, but
no, yeah,
I think the rule of thumb around there was just that if it's a big boar hog, generally he's going to try to hook you on the way out. He's just leaving. But mama hog, she's going to eliminate the threat. So especially
right.
if she's got babies around there, then you really got to be careful with that. But I didn't realize you guys had hogs all the way up in Nebraska. Those things are going
Yeah.
everywhere.
Well, most of ours are the hogs that they raise, but there are a few places where they've gotten out. We don't have a lot of them up here. There's none around any place that I hunt, but I know out west there's when you raise hogs, and then some might escape, and now then you got wild ones. And we don't have the big wild like Russian boars and stuff like that you have down there. But we still do have a few up here. I don't know where I'd go hunt them right now. We have more prairie dogs than anything else.
Yeah.
Got lots of those. Those would be fun.
Yeah, there's I have some relatives out in Lubbock, and they like to shoot the prairie dogs, but I've not really done any prairie dog hunting. I'd like to. There's a neighbor of mine's got a big 6.5 Creedmoor with a scope almost as long as a gun, and he likes to go out there and shoot prairie dogs. That's his thing. The only hunting he does is prairie dogs, but he likes to shoot out there 8,000-9,000 yards. So
With that big of a gun, you need to be a long ways away to make it. Yeah. Otherwise, why you have that big of a gun? To shoot prairie dogs. You don't need that. You can use something a little small, a little cheaper to shoot.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, he does. He also shoots a little competition. There's a range out here that does the long range competitions, but I don't know what he's got tied up in that scope. He's got a scope I think he can see to the next county in, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to watch him shoot. But I've never been prairie dog hunting though. But
well, that makes it a challenge. He does the long range shooting, so that's his way of practicing for the long range shooting. At least you got, you're doing two things. One, you're practicing developing your skills better, and you're also eliminating the pesky prairie dogs.
Yeah, that's one of the things he said. He said originally he paid this guy to go out and shoot prairie dogs. Now he goes, the guy trusts me and he knows I'm not gonna shoot his cows or anything. But he said now all of his neighbors have said, hey, you come over here and shoot prairie dogs anytime you want. So he goes, I got so many places to shoot prairie dogs, but they were just, they need to get to know him a little better where they can trust him and that he's not going to shoot a cow or anything. So
Yeah.
Your background is you have to be really careful with something that'll shoot that far. But
Yeah, if you're shooting at long ranges, you got to be aware, not just the prairie dog, because the cow could be walking in, all of a sudden walk in between there, and now you shoot the cow, and now you're buying a cow from the farmer.
yeah. I know. We had some guys, actually a girl that was getting ready to go into college called me from Oklahoma City, and she wanted to book a hog hunt. And she I asked her, I said, well, have you ever been hunting before? She goes, yeah, we go hunting all the time. And so, I always kind of wanted to know the hunting level, experience level of the people that came out. And
Right.
she said, I'm actually, this is my graduation present. And so I'm bringing my dad, my best friend, and her dad. And I'm like, oh, great. It turned out that the four of them were competitive coyote hunters. And so they went to tournaments. And they came out, they had some crazy looking rifles, the fully suppressed and everything. And they're like, do you think that'll shoot a pig? And I said, well, if you shoot it in the head, it'll kill a pig for sure. So anyway, we were out there and I was giving them a hard time that, you guys are all gun and no shooting and all this, but we were driving down this road and out on the ranch there, and there was a coyote about 600 yards and he just sitting there. And I said, okay, let's see what you got. You guys say you shoot these coyotes, 1,000. So the guy gets out and standing offhand shoots at this coyote, and he just shot a tad short and tad right at 600 yards, just standing there. Well, the coyote takes off running, and he's shooting 3 inches in front of it, 3 inches behind it as this thing runs across that field at 600 yards. He never did. Of course, he didn't shoot it. And of course, they were all of his buddies, the grief they gave him for the next time. But you never want to miss in front of your buddies, but
No.
he redeemed himself. He shot a coyote. It was on a dead run at about 200 yards, and he shot it first shot. But he's like, boy, I'm sure glad I shot that, because otherwise it would have been a long ride home. So
Yeah.
They were a lot of fun. It's fun when you get the guys out and, they're all, giving each other grief and having such a good time with it. But it's a lot of fun. But.
Yeah, I know there's an knack to shooting offhand. Being on a rifle team, we shot prone, kneeling, and standing. And when I went up to Canada on my moose hunt, it was a rifle. It's a good thing it was a rifle, because the only one I seen was probably 300 yards or better out there. And of course, I'm shooting standing because there's snow on the ground, and I'm not going to lay down in the snow and shoot on a rifle team many years. I know how to use my arm as my guide, and it's kind of a interesting story. But so I figure, moose has got the size of a trash can for a kill zone. You take a lid off a trash can, and that's the kill zone for a moose, because they're just so huge. And so I shoot, and it just kind of looked around and walked off. Like, okay, I must be way underestimating the distance. So I raise it up about its back height. I shoot again, and I miss. And this time it kind of jumps a bit, then it stops again. It's like, okay, now I must really be off. So I raise up. I've got it about the head height. So I'm figuring I'm a bow hunter. I shoot 20 to 40 yards. I'm not shooting, 30 yards. So I shoot, it falls over. Didn't even take a step. It just fell over. Like, okay, this is weird. Normally in a kill zone, they're gonna run a little bit, but no, didn't even take a step. It just fell over. So we get up to it, and I find one little drop of blood, not even as big as your little finger on the snow. That was it. And so we field dress it. Ain't found a bullet hole yet. No bullet. So we haul it back the next morning. I'm cleaning it, taking the hide off, and moose hide is really thick. The head and hide was a cow. The head and hide weighed 131 pounds.
Oh, geez.
That's no meat. There was over 500 pounds of meat in this moose. So I've got it off. I've got the head off, and I'm still not finding the hole. So finally I pull it back. That bullet hit right at the base of the skull, right in the spine.
No way.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking, it's like, I know I wasn't that far off to the left.
Right.
My distance was on, because that's right about the height I had it shooting. And then I happened to think back when I sighted that rifle in, I sighted in at 100 yards, and I was just slightly to the left because the deer was pointing to my left. It was just off at 100 yards, slightly to the left. And I didn't even think anything about it. Well, slightly left at 100 yards and you're out at 300 is left about several feet. And so now I'm shooting several feet left, not even thinking about the fact that I was off. As later when I was thinking about it, that's why I was missing it.
Right. Yeah.
Because I was shooting, my first shot would have got it if I'd have been sighted on. The left and right would have been, my horizontal adjustment would have been correct. I'd have got it the first shot. 200
Right.
yards standing.
Yeah.
And that's like, you'll learn, it's, and I should have known that. I shot on a rifle team for 3 years in high school. And there, we had to be real precision, because those targets, the NRI targets, the 9 ring was the diameter of the 22. We shot 22 rifles. The 9 ring was the diameter of the 22. The 10 ring was, if you take a straight pin, like you use for sewing, for holding stuff together, you put that in a dead center of the 10 ring, it covered up the ring. So if you were off by any more than half the width of the 22, you could only get 9.
Oh, wow.
It took it, and there was actual 10 rings on it. A lot of the targets you see only have 5 rings. These had actually 10 rings. So if you hit the last ring, you got 1 point. And we never liked doing that, but
yeah.
And we had several guys getting perfect scores on prone. The perfect score eluded me the whole 3 years in high school. It eluded me, that perfect score. I'm getting 98, 99s, but I would take one and be off by half the distance, more than half the distance on 22. And that was on your 50-foot targets.
That's great shooting though.
Well, and just for fun afterwards, we take the empty 22 shells and set them up down at the end of the range and shoot them.
Oh, wow. Oh,
but that's so, my steady stick, I always have it with me. As long as I got a left arm, I have my steady stick with me. And it's like, why do I want to carry another stick when I can just use that? You put it in your hip, and I shoot high powered rifles that way. I shoot my .6 that way, because it's how I've shot.
There are a lot of guys that are really good shots, but they've always shot off a bench. And a friend of mine's a guide that he guides pronghorn hunts, and he says probably the biggest problem he has is guys shot off the bench. They did all their practicing off the bench, and then he goes, but we shoot off sticks. And he goes, it's a lot different. And so they get out and they throw the sticks up and they just miss. And he said, they just not used to shooting off the sticks. It's a lot different than a bench.
Well, I use the bench to develop loads, being reloading. I've worked up a load for my 270, my .6, where on the 270, I put, when I do them, I'll split the grain. There's a min and a max grain you can put in a shell. I'll go right in the middle, and I'll go by half a grain down, and I'll go by half a grain increments. That's not a lot of difference, and some of the powders for rifles, it might be 3 of those little cylinders, might be the difference. And I worked up a load for my 270, and I was at the range, because I'm using a bench, because I'm working on what's the best round for this bullet, or what's the best setup for this gun. And I put 3 shots in the exact same hole. You could not tell there was more than 1 shot in it.
Oh, wow.
And for my 6, you could tell that there was 3 shots because I was off by a millimeter on each one of them. You could see that there was 3 separate little shots in there, but it was still in the same hole. And that I did kind of the same thing when one time, but when I shoot aluminum arrows, that's before carbons come out. And I wanted all my arrows to weigh the exact same thing.
Right.
With the tips on it. So I had the tips in there. So I took the shaft that was my length, I put the knock in there, and I fletched it, and I weighed it, wrote on the shaft what it weighed in grains. Then I took the tips, because when I had to start buying my bags 100. So I'd go through and I'd find them and weigh them out. And now that I put them in there, and then I'd weigh everything. And on some of them, I was taking and filing the back of the insert for the tip to get my weight. I got a whole dozen arrows, less than a half a grain difference between the whole thing.
It makes a difference. It really does.
Now, did it really make a lot of difference? No, not hunting distances.
No, no.
But
I
I
just think
did
that
that
your
once.
group. Do you think though that it made a difference on your group?
Yeah, it will. The biggest part of the group was I was shooting double X78s, which is a 1.5 thousand straightness, which is in aluminum, that's the straightest shaft you could get. And a brand new shaft is going to be that 1.5 thousand straightness. And if they're all the same weight, you draw back, you put the same power, they're all the exact same speed. Leave it, because they're all the same weight. So now then they're going to drop and group better. Now with carbons, you can get 1,000 straightness. And I have on mine, when I have my Comp Pros, which are 1,000s, I shoot PSC shafts because I'm a PSC dealer and I still got lots of shafts. So I shoot them, and they're really a tough shaft. And with a 1,000 straightness, I can put my broadheads in the X-ring. Now, I had some PSC come out with what they called the Hunter shaft one time. I don't think they even have it anymore. It was a 7,000 straightness. I couldn't group in the X with the same setup. I could not get them to group in the X anymore. I'd get them to group in the white, in the white part, but I couldn't get them group in the X anymore. That's a 7,000s to a 1,000s. And I had a buddy of mine, he was shooting one of the Beemans, and I think it was a 3,000 straightness shaft. And I said, here, Jim, try these. Same draw length. He's left-handed, I'm right-handed, but same draw length. So I said, try these. His groups were much tighter by shooting my 1,000 straightness over his 3,000 straightness. If you want to shoot the tightest groups, you want the straightest arrow you can, and sometimes just fletching them. You can get an arrow that just will not fly right. You put a broadhead on it, and I use the fixed blade, and I line them up. So I use 3 fletching feathers, 4-inch feathers, and 3 blade, and I line them up so the fletching line up with the broadhead. And then I use what they call a U-bar, which is a cone-shaped washer, and a rubber O-ring, so I can tweak it. So I can kind of drive my arrows all group the same. And there are times when I've had an arrow that would not group with the broadhead, no matter what I did. Put a field tip on it, shot perfect. There's something wrong with the fletching. And, having a store, I have 8 Bitzenbergers, and I think I still have 5 or 6 of the BPE fletching jigs. I had a dozen of them at one time. I was sold off a bunch of them. So I had multiple different jigs, and they're not all set up exactly the same. That's where if you want precision, use one jig and fletch them all. Never refletch a single arrow, a feather. Refletch them all, because you never get it lined up. Because if you tweak your alignment when you put it in on your bow, now then you can't get it back into your jig in the exact same spot. So when I had my store, it's like, at that time it was, I think it was like $3 to refletch an arrow with vanes. And it's, well, I only need one, but it's still $3 because I'm going to replace all three of them. Because if I don't get it lined up, it's going to be terrible. And you have different jigs, so I don't know which jig it was done on. So I can't use whatever jig I have because I don't know which one is created on. You know, when I do a dozen of them, I'm going to have 12 different jigs I'm doing a dozen arrows in. Now I have them set up as close as I get to being the same. You know, on a skinny carbon shaft, you don't have a lot of variation you can put in them. You can do them straight or a little offset. Even the helical, you're not going to get much of an offset because the shaft just isn't big enough.
Right.
Especially when you're doing 4-inch fletching. You know, you can a little bit more when you're using the shorter ones, but.
So you're using 4-inch?
Yeah, 4-inch feathers.
Yeah.
That's all I use. This is actually one of my sons. It's a gold tip. It's a Traditions is the name of it. It actually looks like wood grain. And he's got yellow and gray barred feathers on here. But for those watching, you can see this reflective thing here. That works great at night with your flashlights. It catches that. It's a reflective white tape. They have the wraps you can put on. I don't put the wraps on where the fletching is, because if I have to refletch, like this one needs to be refletched because the feather's coming loose. If I have it up here, I have to cut through this, which means I'm eventually going to wear this. So I don't need it up here. So I'll cut these off and I'll refletch these, and then I don't have to worry about this fletching. I don't do this with target arrows. I do it with all my hunting arrows, just because that reflective one. I've found arrows underneath evergreen trees with my flashlight at night, just because the reflection it has in there.
That's cool. No, I always number mine. Like you say, there's always that one that you just can't get to fly right. Cause I use a Muzzy 100 grain trocar, and there'll always be one. And so I have mine numbered 1 through 6. I use that I take hunting with me, and I know that all those are going to fly true. But I do have a couple that for whatever reason they just won't work right with that Muzzy.
Yeah, that's always a good idea to number your arrows so that you know which one you're shooting. And I've talked about this in one of my podcasts a while back. You know, you got your 5 spot, and for some reason, you know, you're doing good on you go left to right, middle, left, right, and top and bottom. And it seems like always that 5th one is way out of whack. I'm like, well, if you have them numbered, shoot number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that order. Well, it could just be you're getting fatigued or something by the time you get the 5th one. So shoot them in reverse order. And if it's still that one messing up, they're you're shooting arrow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pull number 5 out and put number 6 in, and now shoot it. Now, if you're not doing, the number 5 arrow has got something wrong with it. You take it out of your cycle and you look at it. Back when aluminum, it could be a bent arrow. I've had that before at a tournament, the 3D indoor 3D, and I've got, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 arrows with me, 6 arrows. I forget how many I had now, but I always pick the same one. I shoot this one, I shoot this one. It seemed like that second arrow, I kept, for some reason, one was going to, and I used to get in the habit when I pull them out, I'd spin them on the way back. It's not a broadhead, it's just a field tip. You spin it in your hand.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that. And I think I got 2 or 3 5s out of one arrow I was grabbing. So I spun it. Sure enough, it was bad. It took you out of the 10 to the 5.
Yeah.
And good thing it wasn't a tournament. Like, I think a true hunting class should be scored differently. You got your hunter class, which means you use hunting equipment. But there should be, I think it'd be cool to have an actual hunting class. They're scored, if you have a 12 ring, you're scored a 12, 10, 8, -5.
Yeah, that's the deermen. That's the way they do it. If you don't hit a vital, they take points off. So you have to be, you don't take a lot of chances because, you may be a few points ahead of somebody and then instantly you're way behind just because, you miss. But it's a lot of, I really enjoy that part of it. And the other thing that they do is they'll purposely leave a limb. Like if say you're shooting at 30 yards, well, at 25 yards, there'll be a limb in the way. So you have to kneel down and shoot up of one knee because they're trying to make everything as realistic as possible. I think sometimes that's overkill because I think if that was the case, I probably no more than I practice shooting up of one knee, I would have either tried to move or wait for the animal to move. But still, the theory is sound. I mean, it's a good idea, but.
And that's why I've seen some where they'll put a target out at 5 or 10 feet. And knowing that people do not know how to shoot super close targets. And, I just thought, I was like, why'd you put it that? It's like, because too many people miss it. A lot of people miss it. And I've talked to people, it's like, well, I'll just sight down the arrow. You ever shot that way before? No, I'll just sight down the arrow. You ain't going to hit anything. If you're good, you're lucky. It's to make people think, what's a close shot, say it's a branch that's at 5 feet, then you got to know what to do. There's a branch there and I'm going to hit this branch, or you're blind, you've got, maybe you got a metal bar in your blind that's coming right at that point. You're going to hit that and, if you're lucky, you just wreck your arrow. If you're unlucky, you wreck your blind and your arrow and you get hurt. So
right.
Makes you think.
I shot an ASA tournament one time and we like the last next there was like 5 targets left and the first 4 there were it was really dark. We were down in this creek. There was a lot of trees. It was hard to see. And then you walk the last target, you walked out and there was a giant buffalo in this wide open field and it was really sunny. So your eyes kind of had to adjust. And all of us misjudged the distance on that thing. We all thought that he was way out there, but he was only 30 yards. It was just this giant buffalo, and we're all shooting for 50. And he was all of a sudden you come out of the dark and he's all bright and he looked so close, and or he looked so far, and we're like, okay, no, we all goofed that one up, but. My brother had shot that target before and he was giving me grief because he didn't tell me that's what I was going to do. And sure enough, I did it, but he made sure I shot before him. So, but yeah, that really does throw you off though.
Yeah, it can throw you off when you're, and you have going from the dark to light and, or from light to dark, your eyes aren't adjusted and everything looks dark and, good optics is another thing that, I discovered a while back that was really good. I had one guy's like, he went out doing some spot and stalking and, he went out and bought a set of Leicas or Steiners. I forget which one it was now. Then there was like $1,000 for the binoculars. Now that I don't know what they are now because I have priced them recently. And it's, why would you spend that kind of money? I've got a set of Tascos that I got as a 5-year present at one place I worked, what am I going to get? I don't want to like, give me the binoculars, and he says, when you're out there for that long looking through them, it can make a lot of difference in how tired your eyes are. So I was at this 3D tournament and we had a pig or a boar, it was a black target. I think it was a pig in the shadows. So it wasn't really, you can see it around. So I've got my Tascos up there, close one eye doing the thing, and then you open them up and try and get adjusted and try and see where the ring is because I can't really make it out because it's far enough away. And the guy hands me these $1,000 pair of binoculars and I just hold them up. Okay. Hand them back. It took that long to see the spot with this $1,000 one as opposed to my $50 pieces of crap that I had. I don't have those anymore because they end up breaking and I end up throwing them away. But now I've got a little bit better binoculars. I don't have any of those real high dollar ones, but I've got better quality optics, and that's a difference between buying quality stuff and buying the cheap stuff. And I was amazed. I just took it up and like just a little twist on the thing to focus in at the distance, which was almost perfect because he was using them earlier. And I was looking, oh, okay, that's where it's at. It just really took a matter of seconds. I handed them back to him because I wanted to know where the spot was at, because a lot of times you'll see where there's a little dark different spot color, but that's maybe because that's where everybody's hitting. But that ain't the ring you're trying to shoot. It might be off, so you can't go by where the holes are at. You want to look at where it's at, and sure enough, there it was.
Yeah, I did that with a turkey one time. I had a turkey 3D tournament, and they had a turkey in the brush, and you were in the bright light, but the turkey was back into the trees. And the first guy shot, and you just heard a clank, and he hit low and hit the stake.
Oh,
and I was like, oh, sorry, I know I don't want to do that. And so I was able to kind of, like you say, everybody was trying to shoot where everybody else had shot. Everybody was shooting kind of high on it. It was the actual ring was lower. And I actually made a good score on that one. And I was pretty proud of myself because I got the highest score on that. And a little bit later in the tournament, they had another turkey, and I whiffed on it. Didn't even score on that one. And I was like, oh man, how in the world did I hit the 12 ring on that turkey and then walk over here, a lot easier shot where I can actually see what I'm aiming at, and I don't even score, but that's 3D.
That kind of almost reminds me of time I was out bow fishing, and we had these, I forget what it wasn't carp, but it was some other garbage fish like that out there, and I'm shooting them, and I'm missing every one of them. It's a great big old fish. Then this gar comes swimming by, about a 1-inch diameter. I hit it. I hit the gar. I missed the fish that was probably 10 times bigger. I'm missing the 10 times bigger target, but I ended up hitting the little bitty gar.
Yeah.
That was interesting to clean, to be able to eat that gar.
Did you pressure cook it, or how did you cook that?
No, I flayed it out and then cooked it like I would any other fish.
Oh, did you? Gotcha.
But it takes a hunting knife, a fillet knife, and a hatchet.
Yeah, they're armor plated. Those scales are
the
sharp.
Hatchet to chop it off in pieces that's big enough, the hunting knife to slip through the belly, and then the fillet knife to actually fillet around it, once you got them small enough pieces.
Yeah.
You're not getting through there any other way.
Yeah.
And it was kind of weird. The meat kind of looked like a rock bass. Rock bass is white with the little black strands running in it. That's what it looked like.
Huh. I've shot them, but I've never actually ate them. I didn't.
Yeah.
I know some people say they pressure cooked them, but I didn't. I've never actually done it.
Yeah, I bread them, fried them like I do the other fish.
Huh. That sounds good though.
Yeah, it was. Just like, people don't think, carp is, good to eat. I smoked one time with, I forget, it was one of the fruit woods, and I smoked it, and we're eating it. It's like, it tasted like ham because the smoke I used on it.
Yeah.
And everybody says they got all these bones in them. But when you look at, what's the bone structure in a walleye and stuff like that, it's the same bone structure. Everybody thinks, you got to score them. We had a place here in town that they score them. So when they fry them, it burns up the bones. And, I've ate there once or twice and have no desire to eat there because everything's just fried to a crisp, basically, because they slice down there where the bones are at. So they burn up all the bones. But in the meantime, there's no meat left. It's all fried. It's almost like a chip, on the outside. You have to get past that to get into any kind of the meat. And they serve cat and carp. Like, I want cat, I'm gonna go catch it myself. I want carp, I'm gonna get it myself.
Yeah. Cook it how you want it.
Then I can cook it how I want it. And one of the things that I discovered, I forget who told me, but on a catfish, when you flay them out, there's that little strip of yellow meat.
Mhm.
Cut it off,
Yes.
throw it away. Do not try and eat it, because that's where all the fishy taste comes from. Is that
Yeah,
yellow
exactly.
stripe of meat.
It's a big, it's real oily. It's nasty. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like on a deer. Don't eat the fat on a deer.
Oh, no. No.
Yeah.
I was watching Steve Ranella, and he was talking about, he called it tallow, and that's what we called it on a hog. I didn't know you called it that on a deer, but, you know, on a hog that, gets a gristle in it, and it covers their vitals. So they get older, that gets thicker and thicker and harder and harder. And that's why, you know, you take a 350 pound pig, big, especially a boar, that tallow is so thick and so hard that, you're better off to take a hedge, especially if you're shooting like a 5.56 or something like that. You really need to take a headshot, because you're not going to puncture that. You know, at 20 yards with an arrow, you can get through that, but the 5.56 at 150 yards is you're not going to kill that hog.
It's too small of a caliber to go through that. And
Yeah.
not to make it political, that round's supposed to explode.
Yeah,
And
that's
do
right.
massive damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's amazing when people try and make it sound like it's so dangerous, and it's like, no, it was designed to wound, not
Yeah.
really kill.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
a wounded soldier takes another soldier or two to pull them out.
Right. Yeah.
A
Especially because
dead
it kind of
soldier's left
tumbles.
there until the battle's over.
Right. Well, you know, you know, in Vietnam, they talked about that all the time. They would, you know, they would try to wound the first guy through, knowing that the rest of them would try to come up and get him. And then
Yeah.
they could take more than one guy that way. But,
Well, I was talking to one guy that went over the desert and played over there. He said he had one guy come in, because a lot of times they're up on drugs. He emptied his M16 into him, and he still run off. Didn't feel any pain.
yeah.
You know, that's things when, you know, when somebody's on drugs like that, they don't feel pain. And you know, that's like with archery. You know, when, you know, back in archery, you know, archery arrow kills differently than a gun, because we're going through with razor sharp broadheads, and we go right through them. And I've seen some, and I've talked to several people that shot a deer, and they're just going to stand there and look around and start walking off. You know, a buddy of mine that I used to hunt with and go to 3Ds with, he says, yeah, one time this doe come walking in, and he shot it. It just stood there. And he says, must have missed. He got another arrow ready. Next thing you know, here comes this buck walking in. So he shot it. And it just kind of stands there. They both start moseying off. Now, fortunately, he had tags for both of them. So they both start moseying off, getting out in the field, and they both start wobbling, and he got them. They didn't even know they was hit.
Went through them so fast. Yeah.
Went through so fast, didn't hit anything hard, you know, like a bone. Probably went through and missed the ribs. You know, didn't hit a rib and went right through. Nothing hard to make a, you know, big jump or anything. And
Right. So he probably took just a perfect broadside shot. So it went just
yeah,
clean pass through then. And
yeah. And I had one that I did the same thing on. It was come walking, it was going to walk in my tree stand. I shot it, and it just turned around and run out of about 30 yards on, stopped and stood broadside to me. It just ran out. It was like, what? It probably heard the noise from the bow going off at about 10 feet away, and go out there and stop. And it's like, my idea is, if I have more broadheads and it's within range, I'm going to shoot it again.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a, you know, we're talking about branches in the way. There's a branch in the way. So I'm leaning back in a weird position, and I get this, and I know it's 30 yards out there, because I just knew it was 30 yards. So I used my 30-yard pin, made a good shot. It run off the top of the hill, and then this thing, we spent hours looking for this thing. It got to the top of the hill and it took a right turn into the brush. It's like, okay, it had to go in. So we're walking up, down all the fields. And it got us like, so we look, oh, there's a drop of blood over here underneath this little brush. And sure enough, that's where it was at. If I'd have waited, it probably would have sit there and it eventually died anyway.
Right.
But it was just standing there. So, I'd still do it again, because that second arrow in there may have been one that killed. The first one may not have anything really vital, and it could have just decided to walk off, or it could have wobbled and fell over there. Who knows?
Yeah, you don't want to take a chance.
Yeah, I don't want to take a chance.
I shot a doe like that too. It was a group of does came in. I shot doe. It was clean pass through, but the two does standing next to it, the arrow stuck behind it, and they seen the arrow and they bolted, and then that deer bolted because they bolted. And then I was watching, and I seen it kind of wobbling, and then it sit down and get up and take it. Then finally it passed, but I don't think it would have ran if the other deer wouldn't have got by the arrow, but and then they took off too. But
yeah, they do some weird things, don't they?
Yeah, it is funny where sometimes you end up finding them. I had one that fell in a hole, and it was my buddy and I always tease him because he has to call me whenever he shoots a deer. He's colorblind. He can't see blood, but he actually found it of all the people, but he happened to notice its ears, and there was a tree that had fell over, and it was the hole that the roots were in, and it had grown up in there, and it had just kind of slid down in there. But we had lost a blood trail a little bit before that. We were just kind of, doing a circles pattern, trying to figure it out. And he just happened to see its ear, or we would have probably never, ever found that thing. But I was like, man, I'm glad you seen that. And he goes, well, I can see white. I just can't see green and red.
Yeah, that's pretty bad when you can't see green or red.
Yeah. But, he's, I've always told him he probably needs to get one of those thermal monoculars. Maybe he could find it, but
yeah.
No, we've always kind of teased each other about that. But I do have a friend that he has a thermal monocular just for that, because he's colorblind, and he keeps that with him, and he'll scout around. If he's setting up in tree stand at dark, he'll look around just to see what that noise was, whether it was a armadillo scurrying around or actually a deer sneaking by or something. But
yeah, those can be an advantage too, because when you get one down, you'll still pick up the heat signature on it, and you might be able to go to it because you'll see it laying down and start walking, and as long as you left it long enough time to actually die.
Yeah,
I had one that when I was moving my stand up further north because they were coming through after shooting time. So I want to move up further where it's coming from. So I move in there and I get in the tree stand, and I hadn't been in there 5 minutes, and one come running down. Well, some kids out walking around because it's a public park, and they were walking around and kicked it up a little bit earlier than I'd expected. So I shot it, didn't really make the best hit on it. So I got down and I waited, found the start of the blood trail, and then I waited for Randy to show up, and then we started walking down, and sure enough, about 30 yards down the trail, it gets up and runs off. They were predicting about 5 or 6 inches of snow that night. Okay, we can't chase it. So we walk straight out, so we knew to come in. So we come back the next night, and I told Randy and his son, we're looking for a lump of snow. It's covered with snow. And this has been 24 hours after I shot it. And it got it back in, it was a gut shot. One of those, if you hunt very long, you've made one. So Absolutely. We're walking around, and I seen this lump, and I went up, and sure enough, it was snow covered. Here is my deer. And the legs were froze, but the body was still warm.
So
Now,
it had
and it was
been
about
there.
30 yards away from where I got it, kicked it up the first time. It only ran about 30 yards and lay down again and died. But
Oh,
we
wow.
left it alone.
Right, right.
Left it alone and come back. And between the snow insulated a little bit,
Mm.
because it was down into below freezing. Otherwise the snow wouldn't have stayed. I don't remember what it got down to, but it was supposed to get down into, well below freezing. And, the legs had froze, the body was still warm. So it hadn't been dead for that long, but it laid there and then died. And so we cleaned it and drug it out. It's good food.
Yeah, guys make the mistake of jumping them too many times, and then they never do find them after that. But
You do
can
it
back
once,
out.
you're done. You got to quit, because it's even a good hit, you bump them too quick.
Yeah, yeah. When in doubt, back out.
Yep. And just wait, and you might have a good shot. And I know one time I ended up hitting in the back artery and the back hip. Now, as you get older, I see two sets of pins. My right eye is my dominant eye, which is nice, clear set of pins. My left eye, which was not as clear, was a weaker set of pins. I don't even notice them anymore. So I never noticed the second
Wow.
set,
Right.
because for so many years, for actually a few decades, I always just seen it with the right eye. My mind just blocked out the dim set of pins. Well, what happens when you get older? What starts forming on your eyes?
Cataracts. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my right eye is now not my clear eye. My left eye is my
Um,
clear eye. So I knew that pin was right where it was supposed to be when I shot. And I hit the artery in the back hip. So when we found it, it's like, I couldn't have been off. I know that pin was right where it's supposed to be. I didn't know anything. I didn't know this at the time, that my right eye had gotten blurrier than my left eye, because it wasn't enough. It was just enough that my mind picked up the wrong set of pins.
right.
So I go down to the range, and normally when I go down to range practice, then close my left eye. Nailed it. Now, open up both eyes. I missed the target. I was shooting at the right eye on the 5 spot. I missed the target with both eyes open. I'm like, what? So then I closed my left eye, right on both. So then I figured out, oh, my left eye is picking up the pins. So now that I'm try blinking my left eye to force my right one to pick up the correct set of pins. And then I discovered with a hooded sweatshirt, because I always wear a baseball cap. I don't have it on today for some reason, right? Because my hair was wet when I started. But I wear a baseball cap and that hooded sweatshirt. When I turn my head, the hood doesn't move, blocks my left eye. So now, as long as I have a hood on, my left eye gets blocked. I can't pick up the left eye pins. Now, the right ones are still blurry. It's kind of weird. I don't know if anybody's ever had this before, but when I look at my fiber optic pins, it has a black dot in the center of the fiber optic pin. It looks like a donut with a black dot in the center of it. That's why I did long range shots. No, I'm not taking them, because I'm not going to be able to see them good enough to take a long shot. So,
Right.
40 yards is kind of pretty much, limit. I'm not going to try going any further than that. And I generally always try to set up for 20-yard shots.
Right.
But the darn deer, they never paid attention. Always coming closer.
They never read the script.
No, my first deer was 40 yards. I've shot a couple since then at 20, but all the rest have been closer than 20.
Yeah, most of mine are 20 to 30. Very seldom do I have to shoot more than 30.
Yeah.
If I do, it's because it totally came in. And a lot of times, I have to feel just right to shoot over 30. It's because I'm so set up for 20 to 30 that there's a couple of spots on my favorite stand that they could be out there 40 or 50, but they're coming in. I mean, they'll come
Right.
in closer if I just wait. So no sense taking that long shot.
Yeah, no sense taking a long shot if you know they're coming in. And I remember one time when I was down at the dealer school down at PSC, they was telling about a group of people that come in one time, and they had, we call it bionic deer, which is a steel plate with the vitals cut out.
Mm.
So you're going to wreck your arrow if you don't hit the vitals. And they had guys and girls in the group, and they says, okay, how far you think you can shoot this away? And of course, all the guys says, oh, I can shoot this at 50. Clunk, destroyed the arrow. I was like, well, I can shoot this one. Lady comes, I can only shoot this at 20. Walked up 20, and she kept her arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so why would you shoot at a buck that's 40 yards away when you won't shoot at a steel plate with the vitals cut out at the same distance?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose your arrow, but yet you'll shoot at a live animal at that same range. So that the whole point was, in this story and what they were doing was, if you can't make a good shot, don't take it, because you got this like the one that somebody poached on yours, this great looking deer, lot of food for your family, nice rack, or even if it's a big doe, and you shoot it and wound it, it runs off, you don't find it, it's coyote food.
Yep. And it takes another deer out of the herd for no reason,
Right. The coyotes do a good job of taking a lot of deer out of the herd anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now I'd take a shot at a coyote like that.
Yeah. Coyote at 50.
If they die
different.
somewhere,
Yeah.
who cares? But
Yeah.
it's close to where it stinks and somebody don't like the stink. But
Yeah. Out there on our lease, we have a giant black coyote, and all of us wanted, and we've all had, like, when you see him, you got about 0.2 seconds to get a shot off, because he is really smart. He doesn't, if he even senses a human or sees a car, he's out of there. But I've only seen him twice, once at 150 yards away on a pond dam, and then another time we just came around a corner, was out setting up a blind, and he just happened to be there, but nobody was ready to shoot. He was out of there. But all of us are hoping that we get to shoot him, and I would make a rug or something out of him. He's really huge and really pretty. But
yeah. Well, we've been talking about 2.5 hours now.
oh my gosh, okay.
I look like live, like, Grace, it's 3:30. We started at 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, when we started, we plan on an hour, and they go over, and we just get busy talking, and it's just so much fun, hearing all the stories. And I know I enjoy all the stories, and I'm sure our listeners enjoy the stories as well. But yeah, for those, I'll put a link to your website in the description for the podcast. And then for those listening, you can listen to it on Spotify and all those places like that, as well as Audible. And if you want to watch the video, you can check out my YouTube channel. I have a link for that in the description as well. Or for the lucky ones, get to watch this live in the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, and I'll leave the link for that. So anybody still listening to this podcast, I really appreciate it. It's been a whole lot of fun. Time got away from us again. All these great stories, and we're just so grateful that you stuck along this long and listened to us talk about all kinds of our stories. And it's been a lot of fun having you on.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, my name is Roy Canterbury. I've been host Nick on Archery Talk 101, and we'll see everybody on the next one.